Back again,
Back again, brother.
as the famous Arsenal fan would say.
Starting off the
Back
controversy.
again.
Starting off the controversy early, bro. I can't sit for these things. Can't sit and have these things, man. But yeah, we're back again. Got to
Yeah,
keep
man.
going. Got to keep going.
Yeah, no, standard, bro. Standard.
Can't give up.
But
We'll get there.
the people gotta let us know. You get me? Because
Mm.
yeah, man, these conversations we're having, I think, are a little bit different than normal conversations being had, especially from within our communities.
I'd like to think so. I like to think that we are not patronizing people. People are growing. People are getting older. I feel like in this space, people are tired of the same kind of conversations going around in circles. So we're just trying to, like you said, not just talk about things that affect the culture, but what solutions can we offer? And I think that's what we're trying to do, at least.
Yeah, man.
If you're still watching, obviously you see we got a point. So
Yeah,
big you up if you're still supporting the thing, basically.
See it there. Salute.
Yeah.
So welcome again back to MYB, the Mind Your Business podcast. Myself, Index, and Dane.
Yes, sir.
And we discuss, shall I say issues? Yeah, issues, things that happen within our community and culture that we don't really like, things that impact us negatively, and trying to find solutions to those issues.
This is it. Yeah, man. Just we're trying to do our civil service, man. This is not about us. This is about like what we think, what we can do to help people, and that's it, man.
That's
That's
the point. That's the point. So today I wanted to tackle something that is massively controversial. We've had many a talk about this, and I think shout out Chloe, because even Chloe had me up last week about certain one or two things. But yeah, anyway. So I wanted to start with the whole Trump. Well, we've spoke about Trump enough, but I wanted to start with the whole Trump thing and try and emphasize why some people have supported him, especially from within our community. I wanted to focus on some of the things that I've spoken to people about.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that I'm a supporter of Trump, but what I am saying that I do definitely prefer Trump over Kamala. We've discussed this before.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go into the reasons, and then obviously you can tell me, you can shoot me down, take out the rifle and whatnot. So, but first and foremost, like when I speak to people, whether it be on social media, globally, like the general consensus as to the reasons why, there seems to be three common reasons why people support Trump. And those are, especially from men, men being tired of being emasculated. So this whole feminist movement that's been running for some time now, and it's funny how Beyonce like really championed it and is now married and standing by her husband. But and that's a different conversation because that apparently they're getting divorced every year. So,
I feel like people just are overly interested in the pastor that is the Noel Carter family, but I feel like they seem pretty regular as a family to me. They just got very, very high powered, very lucrative, very successful movements and jobs between them. And obviously it seems that, like you said, for all of, I guess, the stylized talk about independence, Beyonce recognizes that there are a lot of benefits to a union with somebody who is of equal standing when it comes to business and it comes to achievement. And I guess, I think that's in most cases, most people, once you find what you consider to be your match and someone that's on the same grind and the same levels as you, circumstances will change.
See it there. So I mean, that's one of the things. First thing being, men tired of being emasculated in that feminist space. Two, the women, I find a lot of them prefer or kind of acknowledge or prefer, I'll probably say prefer a gender normative relationship, and that gender roles being like traditional in the sense of a man, not absolutely like a man just going and getting the money and she just stays at home, but in the sense that a man is a man, turns up, shows up, is very assertive, does his thing, you get me? They like to be protective and provided for.
Absolutely. However, I just want to say one point, even though you said that a lot of women do not like the idea that the man goes to work and maybe being kept or not having to work, I don't see why anybody would be opposed to that. And because like, and this is not, I don't want to make any super generalizations about women, but I think obviously women have been in the workforce for a considerable amount of generations now. They probably understand how difficult the cost of living crisis is. I think a lot of women have struggled, even though they're not necessarily able to say it. I think a lot of women nowadays struggle with the rigor of having to work and balance that. If, like, for example, you have a family or a mother, then it's getting that work-life balance of being able to be present for the more pivotal stages of your child's development and what shapes their behavior in their formative years. And I feel like a lot of women, if they had the choice, if they could spend time taking care of their family, taking care of their household, they would take. Why wouldn't they take it?
You know, and that's a good point. But I also, and I know you're gonna agree with this, but I also know the benefit of having women in the workforce as well.
Absolutely.
Because well, it goes without saying, if we have to educate people about the impact of women being in the workforce, then
don't know what to tell you at this point, because
go
they're not going anywhere. And you know, this is the thing with me. I think that and actually, I want you to talk your point about Trump first in terms of the emasculation of men first, because it'll help me to kind of make that point I want to make.
So, to go on to to elaborate on the second point, it's not so much being in the workforce or being part of the workforce as women. It's more about women just liking a masculine man.
Yep.
But then when you're in a space where a lot of the time men are being emasculated, it stops men or restricts men from showing up as their full selves. Now, I'm not talking about toxic masculinity, which has been conflated with just being a man in a lot of spaces anyway. But anyway, going back to the women, they just like that. They like to be provided for. They like to be protected. You get what I mean? And if you're emasculated, you don't feel like you can step into those spaces to do that for a woman. And that's some of these women that supported Trump prefer that. You get what I mean? As a mate. And then the big word, the acronym LGBTQ community, and the way that Trump has almost, I don't know, like how to put it, basically just is not really for the community in so many ways, in so many words, you know what I mean? And then when I speak to the fellow Americans, especially people within the black community in America, people that support Trump, the biggest things or the biggest reasons are the border and immigration, the economy, LGBTQ, men in women's sports, men in women bathrooms. Those are the sort of things that they're concerned about. Gun rights and freedom of speech and expression. Those are the things that I find when I'm speaking to these people that really rattles them. From a personal point of view, why I prefer Trump over Kamala, two big issues: the LGBT community and how that is promoted, and foreign policy. And I feel like Trump, maybe even marginally, is better for foreign policy as regards to our community and our culture than Kamala ever was. And I'll explain why, but I want to start this by saying I don't hate or dislike anybody from the LGBT community. This is not what this is about. So I'm not here trying to lambast LGBTQ people or people from that community. But it goes to say that there are a large section of our culture, for instance, that share, or I have a lot of conversations where people feel like they can't say things like, all right, then, so for instance, LGBTQ as a lifestyle personally isn't for me. There's a lot of people within our culture that feel the same way.
Yeah.
This is not judging anyone. This is not saying you shouldn't do who you do what you do with when you close your door. It's your business. But me personally, it's not for me. Now, as far as it goes when it comes to the LGBT community, and we can even discuss whether just gay people like to be like included in the LGBTQ community, because it's all, you know what I mean, it means different things. But if we just, for the sake of argument, bring this whole thing together, and it's the way it's promoted, and particularly to kids, that I have a problem with, because I think that kids should just be kids. And they should just leave them alone. So when you have books available in library and in libraries, like school libraries, that are I don't even know, teaching young boys to give fellatio to other young boys.
God,
that's a problem. But I think this is an overall agenda that's being pushed more so from the left and the Kamala Harris's and stuff. And as we say, and as we know, if America gets sick, The rest of the world catches a cold, especially the way that the dynamics are today. So I just wanted to reel off some stats so you can kind of get where I'm coming from. Yeah. And this is why people are upset. So America, globally, this is all global stuff here. They spent 1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbian workplaces. And as we know, DEI didn't really, like, it's connected to the black culture, but didn't really benefit us. And I don't know how many black people there are in Serbia anyway. So I'm not, I don't know. I can't speak for it, but
I can't think of any black Serbians off the top of my head, to be honest with you.
So, I mean, it's probably a dangerous assumption, but we know that DEI benefited women, white women, and the LGBT community before it did black people in particular. Yeah. 2 million for sex changes in Guatemala. US spent 6 million to fund tourism in Egypt, which is a whole different point, but more related to foreign policy. They spent 20 million for a Sesame Street show in Iraq, a country that the US toppled its government in 2003. They're now spending 20 million on a Sesame Street style show for Iraqis.
Seems very strange.
Right. So, I mean, you make the connection yourself. $70,000 for DEI musical production in Ireland. $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. $32,000 for, no, I've already said that. Yeah, they spent 1.5 million to promote LGBTQ in Jamaica.
How much?
$1.5 to promote LGBT.
No, what I'm saying is, I know how much you said, but I'm just saying it's not gonna be enough in Jamaica. So
no, but
you're way below budget for that.
I mean, I think the biggest problem with that is when you consider the amount of I mean, I've been to Jamaica many times, and I don't just stay in the hotels. I'll get a car and drive about the place. So I know
deprivation is a bit more than
it's mad.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? Crime, roads, hospitals. There's so much other things that you could fix.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, local Jamaicans have access to less than 3% of the beaches. In Jamaica.
Most black Jamaicans do not have access to beaches in because they're owned by resorts who pluck their resources out of Jamaica. Right.
So the reason why I raise all of these things, is because I can then understand why people would then be not say weaponized, but almost angry and then swing towards supporting Trump.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, this is not, again, lambasting people from the LGBTQ community. This is just purely saying that when you overly leverage on something and then direct it towards kids in particular, people are there's gonna be a backlash.
Yep.
And this Trump is what you're looking at in terms of the backlash. People are tired of not being able to say these things that I've just said now.
Yeah.
People are scared to say and don't want to say. You get what I'm showing you? Like, they don't want their kids being promoted. Like, kids should go to school and be kids. You get what I mean? Not being taught how to do stuff. You wouldn't do that to a 9-year-old and a normal 9-year-old. You get what I'm showing you? But you out here promoting transgenderism to 9-year-olds, puberty blockers, gender changing up, like surgery, all of these things that they targeting towards kids. And these are the very people that would then lambast the Islamic religion for Muhammad having a 9-year-old wife, but yet promote these things to 9-year-old kids in today's society. To me, this is, what are we doing here? This just doesn't make sense in my opinion. So with all that being said, I've set the stage. I know you've got things to say.
Well, no, I think it's important because obviously we have conversations knowing that we both take different sides in terms of these things, because I would say, I mean, Obviously, I am a cisgender heterosexual man, but I would like to think I have solidarity with the LGBT plus community, in particular the Black queer community, because obviously I think a lot of the time when we do speak about the initiatives that have emerged in America and across the world in the last 5 years or so, I would agree that they seem to be benefiting um, the LGBT community to an extent, and there seems to be a lot more proliferation, but this doesn't necessarily seem to be benefiting Black members of the LGBT community who still deal with the same systematic issues of being discriminated against and being marginalized as their cisgender and heterosexual counterparts. I also feel like, particularly for the Black trans community, they are particularly, their plight as trying to navigate the world is much more difficult than their white counterparts. Dozens of Black trans people die because of the precarious situations they have to place themselves in, because they struggle with employment, they struggle with housing, they struggle with government assistance. And so I'd say my solidarity is with them. And yeah, so I've made that point clear. But I will say definitely that what tends to be a repeated pattern is when our community does make progressive strides towards equality, everyone else seems to benefit and we don't really get that. And before we're able to consolidate our equity, then that seems to be distributed in the ways that you described. Now, I'm not sure if necessarily Donald Trump was the answer to that, but I do understand what you said in terms of the fact that people feel that they are being silenced or marginalized or can't express themselves, and it has led to a very severe backlash, which may push people towards Trump, in the same way that even though the Democratic Party as an ideology is supposed to protect the needs of the working class, they've not really made good on their promises. Obviously, there's been some instances of like student debt relief, but in terms of providing a safety net to the cost of living crisis and the economic crisis in the United States, I think that a lot of people feel like they're marginalized, they've been overlooked, and promises that have been made to America's workforce have not been fulfilled. Which, and it's not just been fulfilled, but there's never been any sincere discussion about it. I think throughout the DNC's campaign, there was just a lot of talk of the demonization of Trump as opposed to discussing any policies that are going to benefit America's workforce. And, you know, that would explain why people gravitate towards Trump. I think so far as the issue of the disenfranchisement of men, I do definitely agree that, and I understand a lot of men feel this way. And I agree with you in that, like, men expressing protest at how they may feel being marginalized or being disillusioned, and just men displaying, I guess, aspects of masculinity, being conflated with toxic masculinity is counterproductive. Doesn't really help anybody. There are certain aspects of what we might describe as masculinity or alpha dominance, which are beneficial to men. Like men being able to, you know, play contact sports, and basically anywhere they can have these positive spaces for as outlets for the testosterone are important. They're important, especially for younger men and adolescents who are coming to terms and with understanding their hormonal changes and becoming men. If there are not spaces for them to be able to explore that masculinity, then that can be counterproductive. My rebuttal to that would also be as well, though, that while I definitely do not agree with the sexualization of children, which is an ubiquitous problem irrespective of where you sit on the political spectrum, I think children are sexualized in so many ways, way before they should be. But I also feel like there needs to be, even though we may agree with the lifestyle, there has to be a space which allows people to be themselves. And the reason I say that is because I think what happens a lot of the time, and this is not just something that is to do with just the queer community, this is with community in general, is that because children are robbed of the language to understand sexuality, not the act of having sex, but understand sexuality, whether it's their hormonal changes, who they're attracted to, there are adults who can take advantage of this, and they can corrupt, they can traumatize and abuse children who do not have the tools to explain what happens to them. And what tends to happen a lot of the time, and this is a experience I think is shared across both the entirety of the sexuality spectrum, whether you are considered straight, gay, lesbian, you are robbed of the opportunity to explore your own sexuality, and people will abuse you, and that in itself can lead to a lot of confusion.
How are we defining exploring sexuality?
So, I'm not saying exploring, but like, for example, I'm just saying, for example, like, you may be a lesbian woman, you're a teenager, you find yourself attracted to other women. You may not necessarily feel safe to say that or explore it or to come out of the closet, so to speak. And what tends to happen is sometimes people will be like, oh, so you don't, and I'm just speaking with like you know, anecdotal evidence where sometimes someone might be like, well, you say you're a lesbian, but maybe you haven't had the right man yet, and can force themselves upon a woman, or, you know, sometimes be like, oh, what, so you like girls as well, yeah, but how do you know you like men if you've not been with a man? And there are some instances where people can be very forceful with that, and like I said, that happens across the board, because and I think that you know, it's not really spoken about, but that's something that a lot of black people have had to take the brunt of, where within mainstream or dominant white culture, people have been in the closet about themselves and have been able to take advantage of our community, whether in like in the care system or like missionaries. And
so you know, take advantage, you're talking
abuse, yeah,
straight out abuse,
and straight out abuse, and what tends to happen then is that people then how their psychosexual identity is formed. It can really, like you said, if you look at a book and it's showing you normalizing giving the boy head and all the rest of it, you're not even thinking sexually. But if you are given ideas that this is gratifying for people and these are normal ways to explore yourselves without any context, then it's gonna mess up your head. In the same way that, like, even if you are a young straight man and you are fed a diet of porn way too young, you're gonna have a malformed idea of how you think sex and being with a woman works. And we're seeing this across the board. So I do agree with you that I think that you could argue that maybe there's been this Trojan horse of why we've trying to proliferate and normalize certain aspects of, you know, the sexuality spectrum, and providing space for the LGBT plus community. It is going to be open to people that try to corrupt that, and children can be corrupted in that as well. I just think that that's not something that just happens with the LGBT community. That happens across the board, but there may be an element of sensationalism where there are people that, like, there's a cosmetic aspect of how people perceive being gay, and I think it's almost very similar to music and stuff, where people like want the rhythm but not the blues. I don't think a lot of people are like, oh, all it is to being gay is that you go to drag queen brunches and you dress up this way, you put glitter on your face, and it's all blessed. And that's not really the experience.
Yeah, and I understand fully what you're saying, and I agree completely in that the sexualization of any child, whether, you know, whatever it is, gay, straight, whatever, that is, I don't agree with that. But my point really is that there's a large portion of our community that feel the way I do, in the sense of LGBTQ as a lifestyle is not for me. Therefore,
I think I'm just trying to see what you define as a lifestyle, because obviously, I mean, I'm very sure that we will meet black members of the queer community who, in every other aspect and deed and thought, you wouldn't know their sexual orientation. So I wouldn't say that their lifestyle is different to my lifestyle. So that's
part of their lifestyle. No?
Well, I mean,
well, let's focus on that particular. The fact that, you know, who you do what you do with is not got nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
But the fact that you do that is not my thing.
So it's something, if it's something you don't agree with,
yeah. So then, and that's just my opinion. So therefore, I would then doubly not want. I'm not down for sexualization of kids in any way, shape, or form. But particularly not when I'm trying to raise and I don't have children, but if I do have children, I mean, I'll give you a scenario in which something happened with my nephew. But the point being is, I don't want my child coming home and trying to explore those topics with me from a point that it's being promoted to them as a thing that I would not want them to be promoted to. You get what I mean? I don't want them to be like, it's the same thing with, if you see, you know, I remember being young, when you see people kissing on Home and Away, my mom used to turn it off.
Yeah.
You get what I'm showing you? She don't want me to see them kind of things.
Yeah.
Too young. That's all I'm saying. And there's a large portion of our community that feel the same way, but have been lambasted or silenced into not being able to say it openly. Now, this, again, we're not out here trying to say, bon you man and this, that, rare, like, do what you're doing. Like, no one ain't saying that. I'm just saying, allow the kids, leave the youth them, you get me? Because as an adult, if you decide to go and do whatever you're doing, that's got nothing to do with me, and I actually don't care. Honestly, I really don't care. It does not matter to me one bit. So this is not me lambasting them, but I do definitely have a problem. And when you consider all these things that I've been talking to you about, and the way that America has really been pushing this agenda, when you're talking about Sesame Street, you're not marketing Sesame Street to adults.
I hear that.
You get what I'm showing you?
Yeah.
So
I think that's fair. I think for me personally, as I said, as somebody who has much more of a liberal outlook, I definitely appreciate I think the sexualization of children is a real issue across the board. But I think that I agree in terms of, you know, children prematurely should not be, you know, introduced to sex for the sake of inclusion. But at the same time, I feel like that's because people don't know how to handle it and they don't really know it. And most people, when they think about the LGBT community, the sexual aspect of it is the only thing people really consider. And then maybe and them glorifying it is an issue. In the same way that glorifying urban youth violence is an issue. But all I would say is that, like, I personally feel like there needs to be a space for people, for young people who identify as queer or the LGBT community, and then there needs to be a space whereby they should be able to openly express who they are and, you know, live their truth. Because I think when that doesn't happen, then it leaves open to all of this sexualization. And
how young then? So if a 9-year-old comes and says, "Oh, I feel like I'm gay," for instance.
If a 9-year-old says that, I'd be like, well, what does that even mean? Because I don't expect, because I think that's where we agree, is that I don't think in 99.9% of cases, any 9-year-old, just on a hormonal and chemical and biological basis, has any interest in sexual congress. It's just something that is suggested to them, is what we agree on is a problem. But I just think that if a 9-year-old says, "Oh, I think I like boys," it's something you can explore. And I think obviously more research into discussing that needs to go into place. But I just feel like no child at that age should be talking about what they want their sexual proclivity to be or what they want their sexual orientation to be, because like I said, you're a child. It doesn't feature. Because obviously there's been biological studies have concluded that there is no gay gene. And obviously people talk about being born queer, but I would say my answer to that hypothesis would be that no one has a sexuality at that age. No one needs to have a sexuality at that age, because your body has not developed for you to be reproducing, which is the purpose of having sex in the first place. So if a 9-year-old does come to you and say, "I feel like this," I would inquire as to why they're saying that, because the odds would be that if you are having that kind of language, it means that probably someone has suggested that to you, rather than you coming up with that yourself. Because like I said, as a straight cisgender man, that's all. As a child, when I was 9, like when I was 12, I was 15. I took to a good game at 15, but I still didn't know what I was doing. And that might not be experienced for everybody. But then even in my experience, people that appeared to be more sexually advanced than I was could relate it to a sexual trauma of them being sexualized way before their time. And I think that's something. And so for me, I think that happens across the spectrum. So I'm not sure. Like I think with the stats you've presented in terms of the financial push that's gone into that, I don't think that's necessarily beneficial. And I think that is very performative, and it's a very cosmopolitan way of appearing as if you are helping marginalized communities where you're not really doing anything. Like for me, water filtration, I don't care what your sexual orientation is. I don't care if you wear a ball gown and you got a skin fade and you wear Timberlands and you're mixing the whole thing. You need clean water to live. You need clean air to live. And so providing a structure that allows for anybody to flourish irrespective of their sexual orientation.
So going back to that,
it's something I'd prioritize over anything.
What age do you think we should be providing these spaces, just generally?
Well, I think, when do people normally get provided with sex education? Because now I look back, I don't think I got amazing sex education in school. I think I was like 14 or 15. And I mean, it's more from the purposes of reproduction and you understanding the organs and stuff like that as well. But it's like today when I think about when, for example, cisgender women explain menstruation to me, if I was to rely on school to teach me that, I wouldn't know nothing. That came directly from women. Like, for example, if you're a black person, as a black woman, you may have a higher likelihood to have something like thalassemia, where you maybe lack certain clotting factors, more likely to have an anemia, whether it's sickle cell anemia or just anemia. Coming on your period is knocking you out, bro. Like, it's knocking you out. I knew girls, if they come on, because they're anemic, they can't move. And, you know, but even things like fibroids, these are also things that are affected by your hormonal output, and they're just not really discussed. And so that's something that should happen at a certain point. But I think that in terms of sexual...
Fibroids is an interesting conversation. And sorry to cut you there, but I just think like when you consider things like... consider things like diet, exercise, and products, hair and beauty products marketed towards black women in particular, fibroids, it's been shown to have like impacts on these sort of things. So I get what you're saying. The point being is something that needs to be
I mean, now you say that's not like going to be taught in school, innit? But I guess it's hard because obviously I'm not of the LGBT
Yeah,
plus
yeah,
community
yeah.
to say what would benefit you to learn about yourself and to understand yourself. Because again, as I said, like I feel like I have a much more liberal leaning to this. I don't think it's right that if you are a gay person in the black community, you're a lesbian, you consider yourself to be bisexual, transgender, that you will have to hide who you are. Because I think that when people then have to go into hiding spaces and do things behind closed doors, there's much more of an opportunity for people to be corrupted or people to be involved in spaces that they may not necessarily know to be in.
A lot more insidious.
Yeah, exactly.
But the reason why I raised the point is not to create that kind of space. I don't. If you become of an adult age and that's, you decide, okay, or you not so much decide, you feel like you're more attracted to the same sex. Then at some stage, then yes, let's have that conversation, or let's open up spaces for, and that's for anybody. I'm showing you, anyone who's being over sexualized and is doing anything under the age of whatever the age is, and I'm not trying to solve for that. I'm not saying that I have the answers. I'm just saying marketing this towards kids is, to me, nuts. You get what I'm showing you? And that's purely my point. And that's the reason why, going back to the original point, is why I feel, well, not even I feel, a lot of people say it, but they don't say it openly. It's like they're tired of this agenda being marketed towards kids. And this is coming from the left. So where you're talking about, Trump and his administration doing what they do, and I think what they're doing in terms of like not creating enough spaces for the LGBT community can also be dangerous. But if I'm choosing for it not to be, because they exist and they're going to exist, LGBTQ community ain't going anywhere, and I'm not saying they should. That's their prerogative to be who they are. I want to make that very clear. Got nothing to do with me. But when it comes to the kids, I feel like it's dangerous to market.
It's a weird one, because I can't really talk too much about it because I'm not of that community. Do you know what I mean?
And also as well, this is the thing, and I don't want to get in the weeds of it too much, because whether it's nature or nurture, all of that conversation, that is above my thinking. You get what I mean? But
I think a lot of people probably share your sentiment within that community that just do not get the chance to speak. And maybe some people like that may have even also gravitated towards Trump. But I just think, myself personally, I do agree in terms of sexualization of children is not okay, even if it's in this stylized way, and we shouldn't be trying to push children to accept a lifestyle when they're still learning to understand themselves. And we definitely should not be leaving out guardians and parents of children at this conversation about what's best and what's the best time.
So to reference that particular point was when my nephew went to school and was basically told that his friend is now a girl and that will be using the girls' bathrooms and so forth, and to refer to him as a girl. But the key point here was, don't tell your parents.
And that part I have a problem with.
This was an 8-year-old.
Yeah, and that's the part I have a problem with, because I don't think that's safe for whoever the trans child is. I don't think it's safe for the children there either. And it's not something that you should leave guardians out of. If people don't, because I don't know, because it seems like, is it an effort to protect these children? I don't necessarily know, but I just think that anything that involves something outside of your family saying, don't tell your parents, that's the kind of thing people say when they are taking advantage of children, whether they are gay, lesbian, bisexual. Normally, the person that forces this person to have their sexual awakening is like, yeah, don't tell your parents. So that part I definitely don't agree with.
The point is, what I'm trying to make, as far as I'm concerned anyway, when it comes to our community, is that there's people that agree and people don't agree, or people that, as a lifestyle choice or decision or feeling, thought, whatever it is that you decide it is for you, that's your business, but it's not for them. We are all from the same community. We're all from the same culture, and we exist in that space. Now, just like the LGBT community can have many opinions on so many different things, we can have opinions too. And we can all exist in the same space, but it doesn't mean that I'm judging you. You get what I mean? And that's the whole point I'm trying to make, because it feels like it is a us versus them thing. And I have gay friends that I've had this conversation with. You get what I'm showing you? And some gay friends that, or can't call them friends, because when you have these conversations, they decide they don't want to be friends anymore. But I've never once judged you. I've just said, well, that's you, it's not me, and that's all it is. You get what I'm showing you? And and we, I believe, need to and a lot of people that because I was brought up as a Rastafarian.
Yeah.
A lot of people that know me are gonna be like, "Yo, blood, what are you talking about? Man, don't you get me?"
Yeah.
But
Listen,
we all exist. We're
Yeah.
here. You get? I'm showing you. So this is not for me. It's like we have to understand we do exist. But as far as my voice is concerned, I want to be able to voice my opinion in the same way that an LGBTQ or someone from that community can do the same thing. And many different things, and I feel like it's important to acknowledge these spaces on different people's and then people's opinions, and realize it's not a point of judgment. It's not a point of, well, you're this or you're that, or you know what I mean. It's just because then that will stop us from having conversations in our own little microcosms. You get what I mean? Because the people feel this way. People don't want this promoted towards their kids. It's just that's how they feel.
Some people just don't agree with it, and I think when you consider like some religious institutions and stuff, people won't agree with it, and they won't be challenged in the same way. But I'd say in terms of the lifestyle, you should have the right to express, you know, that you don't agree with that lifestyle, and it's not something from you, and it's not communally. That's not something that is normalized in your society. And I definitely understand that across the black community. I wouldn't have been here if I didn't know that. It's just yeah, my personal view is I don't think that we should that should be anything that becomes too hostile and stops these people from living their truth. Because I just think that it opens up the door for so much more harmful policies, and I feel like that's the fear that people have about Trump, because people agree that you should be able to say stuff, but my concern is what that festers into, and people start normalizing harm towards these communities and stuff. Because, as I said, there is the intersectionality whereby being black is enough, then having to be black and queer on top of that. Now you're fighting a war on two fronts.
Yeah, and
you're not getting the backings that the white counterparts are.
I'm not trying to solve for that. What I'm trying to solve for is get people from within our culture specifically to understand that people that don't agree is probably a strong word. It's just not for them.
Yeah.
However you want to view it, agree, disagree.
It's just not for them.
It's just not for them.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're judging you. So let's not put up walls and barriers. And as soon as, like you say that, because I've had conversations where you don't get to finish your thought because automatically it's deemed as, oh, you're one of them. Yeah. You get what I'm showing you? No, I'm not going to lie. I've been brought up in a community where it is like,
of course,
bond down this and bond down that.
Some people, are much more hardline. There's certain friends I know, like, to mention or even to gaze about anything remotely like that, the produces a very hostile response, which I think, and I've just got to say in it, it's like I don't necessarily agree with that. But so far as, like you said, ideologically, where you're like, I come from the community, and even the values and spiritual system and the spiritual culture I was brought up in, we don't do that. Yeah. And that's something that, like, I will not just erase because I'm like, you lot are just idiots and you're homophobes, but it's not as straightforward as that. And there should be dialogue. And I'll be honest, we're probably not the people to have that. Yeah. By ourselves.
Yeah, I'm not, and this is the thing. I mean, when we spoke about this conversation, I said I didn't really want to get into the weeds of it, because I feel like if we're gonna do this, we need to do it with members of the LGBT community and respect their rights to be who they are, whatever. I'm just saying, as far as a voice is concerned, and just not agreeing with it, you get what I mean, and then moving on with your life. It's not agreeing with it and saying, you man shouldn't do this, boom boom bam, you gal shouldn't do that, bam bam boom. Like, it's just not for me, and I'm keeping it moving. Done. You get me? Like, for the gay friends that I have, and there's only a few of them, because those are the only ones that have respected my opinions and kept it moving, and I love and respect them for that, because it's like, well, we don't have to be fake out here. You can be who you are and be 100% you, and I can be who I am and 100% me, and we can still exist in the same space. Yeah. And we could still look at our community in the same ways that we would if I was gay and he was straight, or whatever the case may be. It's not a case of...
That's what I'm saying, Index. You say it better than Trump does. You break it down better than Trump does. I feel like he uses more populism and kind of like tries to get people riled up.
That's politics though, bro.
Absolutely.
That's politics.
But you're much better at the politicking.
Well, I mean, I'm not... I think it's just common sense. It's not so much politics. I'm not trying to get elected, because there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this and say, fuck that brother, he's chatting shit, and there's going to be a lot of comments that's denouncing what I'm saying. Well,
could be on both sides as well.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, but I think for me it's important, because I don't think we can really have any kind of collective progression as a community if we are erasing the narrative or denying the humanity of particularly black
You say it
members.
for the people at the back, please,
Yeah,
brother.
we can't do it together if we're going to be having this erasing of the voice of that community.
Right.
And we can do that with the context of understanding that there's aspects of the lifestyle people don't agree with. But I just think personally,
in today's society,
you can't have say that.
Their voices are not the ones that are being silenced, and that's my point.
I hear that.
You get what I mean?
Yeah. And we can use that to go into the other point of with men and stuff as well, which I think that it's like there has been this crisis for a very long time, and there are some people that may believe that women have been empowered over men deliberately in order to provide that emasculation. And I say this because I think the way a lot of governments are moving now, and in terms of like economics and in terms of like ideology, I think a lot of governments are patterning so that men feel so disenfranchised. We lack the potency to revolt against these governments and their policies.
Right.
I think that, like, this is going to sound mad from me, but I'm saying it. I think that there are jails full of men who could potentially be challenging government policy.
Yeah.
But they're in jail for non-violent crimes.
Right.
If that makes sense.
And who in America, who put a lot of those men in jail? Kamala Harris.
Right.
She's the same woman that broke up a lot of black families when I can't remember the exact post she held in America, but she was basically responsible.
As a district attorney, maybe?
I don't want to.
I wasn't sure that was debunked or whatever, and I'm sure people will tell us, because during the run-up to election, some people like the idea that she put a lot of men away, even for like weed charges. But I wasn't sure if it was necessarily true.
It's not so much it's the laws that you put in place. Yes. So it's not like you're the judge with the gavel saying, boom, you're going to jail. You are instrumental in patterning these laws that affect our community. And when I say our community,
but it does, disproportionately, it does affect us. Yeah, absolutely.
Affects our community, which then breaks up the black family, which leaves single women out there doing it alone. You get what I'm showing you? And these women, a lot of these, again, like you said, it's non-violent crimes. Yeah. You get what I'm showing you? So,
and I think the other problem is that the world has changed significantly, whereby the points from which men are able to derive their masculinity and give themselves a sense of purpose, which is like contribution and provision.
That's important, bro.
Yeah, because purpose is important for all human beings, and for men, purpose is important and provision is important, because a lot of these are like natural instincts that we originate maybe from hunter-gatherer.
You know what? Let's just say it, because I feel like these are the things that we tiptoe around.
Yeah,
like as men, we innately, for the most part, have a need to go out and gather. Yeah, and hunt, and you get what I mean. This is why,
and then
provide. This is why traditionally we're the ones that approach women. Yeah, you get what I mean. We're the ones that are peacocking. We're the ones that are out here trying to look good, and you get me, to attract like we're the ones that are trying to show our masculinity. You get me, and innately, for the most part, women are looking for the strongest male. That's why the whole tall, dark, and handsome thing exists. Because if women didn't care about physical dominance, then everyone will be dating short men.
Right. Well,
you get what I'm showing you? Like, debunk that. You get what I'm saying? But like, listen, you go into a club and the gal them are looking at it's like they look tall first, and then they delineate whether or not them men are like of decent look. Yeah,
and then but like I said, it's instinctive. It's like, because you are trying to predispose your offspring to have better chances of survival as well. If someone looks
without even knowing, though, that's the magic. That's like human nature.
But I think there's been a lot of things that have affected it. Now, again, for me, I think that capitalism and raw capitalism has definitely played a part in that. By disenfranchising men economically, it's affected how men are perceived by women. Like I said, a lot of jobs where men may be kind of overrepresented have disappeared over the years. Alternatives do not exist necessarily. And I feel like there's been a massive thing where what makes men feel like men, being able to earn for your family and take care of them, these are things that have been eroded from men over time.
You know what, I want to make a quick point actually, because I don't think on the last two podcasts when we spoke about this particular thing, but in regards to DEI, I wanted to drive home the point that I think anybody working within DEI over the next 5 years should start to look for alternative income streams. Yeah. Simply because this is that you're already seeing companies in the UK doing away with DEI.
Although, really and truly, your best day at work as a DEI employee should be that you don't have to have the job anymore.
Well,
Because if you think about it, what you're working towards is creating a level playing field whereby there wouldn't need to be the need for initiatives because we'd have a landscape of meritocracy. So you get ahead because of how good you are.
Yeah.
So really, everybody who works in DEI should want to not have a job in the next 5 years, because that means that it's not needed anymore because we have.
Well, I mean, you know what? There are a lot of people that I know in that space that are in that space for good deeds, like they're trying to do.
I'm saying they are.
I want to make this point, and I want to make this point as well. There are some people that have just landed a nice number and they're sitting down and saying, "Yeah, man, I'm here." Like,
of course,
you get me. This is a career. This is like a career job. You know what they say? Like you know, you have one job in your whole career. Like
the Vegas contract if you're an entertainer.
You get what I mean?
That's the last one.
It's not.
Yeah, I'm done after this.
It's not that. You get what I'm showing you? If you're working in DAI, and this is a serious point, I think you should be starting to look at leveraging other skills, because right now companies are doing away with that space. You know what I mean?
And a lot of companies weren't necessarily doing them in earnest in the first place. But yeah, hopefully people are thinking about their transferable skills and what they're coming to. But I think you're right that that's definitely changing. And I think, you know, in the same way that like just a lot of the employment landscape has changed and it's not really thought about taking care of men, and that's very difficult. And I'm not sure if from a, you know, economic standpoint, what the solution to that is necessarily, because we not just have to accept it like in a, like, you know, submissive way, but there are more women on the planet than there are men. And
choice.
That means democracy. That means the choice and stuff like that as well.
No choice for us.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Exactly. But democratically, like, you know, women can potentially have a lot more political power, which is why women have been so disenfranchised by many a government and many a institution over the years. I don't think this is really necessarily that hazardous to men, but I think that there is now a chauvinism that's encouraged among women, that is like, you are supposed to seek jobs and seek economic empowerment at the expense of men, so you can have dominance over men, arguably in the same way that men have tried to dominate women through patriarchy. But I just think that
it's a hard balance to strike, though. You get what I mean? Like,
definitely.
And it's definitely when you're dealing with people and their egos and you know, you got people over leverage. I always say, right, revolution and evolution work hand in hand. What do I mean by that? When something is revolutionized, it evolves in how many like people interpret it in different ways and go off and do different things. It's almost human nature to do that. But sometimes we as humans have a habit of over leveraging in some spaces.
Always.
And this is what we're dealing with, is just the over leveraging. So I don't think we'll ever get it right. You get what I'm showing you? This is why we're having this conversation right now, because there's a problem. If there was no problem, I'd be at home doing something else.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm showing you?
Absolutely.
So it's just the fact that we've got this issue why we need to unpack it and discuss it, and really, I think, bring to the fore, like, that is what it is, just an over leverage on the behalf of when it was patriarchy, men dominating women in whatever spaces, and now it's kind of like the reverse.
Matriarchal now. And you know, I think for our community, we've historically been matriarchal for a long time. And I don't just mean that just women run us, it's that we are a community that understands the importance of women, and we always have, down to like fertility gods in Africa, up until, you know, black women having the Eve gene and containing the mitochondrial DNA of all of humanity. So if you're on your things, you understand that. But I just think that I do take on board the point that the ways in which men are able to express themselves and celebrate an aspect of their masculinity in a positive way has been conflated with the toxicity, which is not the case. And I think that you can see how that manifests, where it's like youth clubs there's not a lot of youth clubs, sports programs. Do you know what I mean? Just like, not to say finishing schools, but you know, like women would have finishing schools where you're taught to walk with a certain way, you're taught with posture, you're taught your etiquette at dinner. Those don't exist for young men. Like, and I think there's a problem where and it's not necessarily our community directly, but it seems to be that the development of young men has been taken for granted, and that's definitely left open a space for more toxic influences that have created anger and misdirected men's anger and the testosterone and all the rest of it. And it is a massive problem whereby, in the same way that a lot of us have disappeared and end up in prison and being erased, the fraternal system of older brothers, your elders, fathers, that communal opportunity to offer young men insight and wisdom, there's been a cut-off point. And I think there's a lot of things that affect that. Like, our community has a weird problem with ageism that bothers me. That if you try and tell somebody something, you're an uncle, bro, you can't tell me nothing and all the rest of it. You think the Arctic Monkeys can tell the Rolling Stones they can't tell them nothing?
Yeah.
You can't tell. They would be erased if you're a white group of rock stars and you say that like the Rolling Stones or the Beatles are dead.
I really want to highlight this because I think it's something for our and this is not even on the agenda, but it's an important point that our community, if we're disrespecting our elders, there's some sort of it's sort of like a status symbol.
Yeah,
you get what I mean. Whereas in other communities, you just don't do it, bro.
You're a pariah. You're done. You're done out here. You're
done.
There
was a time when, and this is why I love African culture as well, you know, because a lot of my African friends, the way that they respect their elders, like, and you're talking when, like, they've been born and raised in the UK and then say like an uncle or an auntie comes to the UK from Nigeria or Ghana and whatnot, and they've gotten the whole, like, I've literally seen them, they walk in a room with full on African dress, yeah, and the revere that
you got to prostrate sometimes.
Brother, like
you see the chief of the village or you go and see an elder, you got to prostrate and show your fealty and respect for them. And
I rate that highly. And coming from a space in which that's what we used to foster in the Rastafarian community.
Absolutely.
Like, that was what it was.
If you saw the bingy man, you had to show respect.
Blood.
Every
even
time.
to this day, when I see certain races.
Yeah, man.
You get me? Like, I just tilt my head and...
Absolutely.
And you know, you can see...
But it's even like when I meet members of the Nation of Islam, bro, I watch my language. I don't do it a certain way. And I won't do it gratuitously anyway, but I understand. It's a perfect example, going back to what you said about, I don't agree with that lifestyle. I'm aware that members of the Bingy man and Rastafarian community, there's certain things I might be into, but to talk about it with them graphically is a disrespect.
Yeah.
So I just don't do it.
Yeah.
Because I respect.
Yeah.
Nation of Islam, man, don't you swear in, they might not talk, so they don't talk about like graphically about sexual things and stuff like that. So I lock that talk off.
Yeah.
Because I respect because they're my elders. Whatever the spiritual thing is, these are my elders. So I won't say certain things.
Standard, and I feel like that is an important point. Like,
and I think that, and that's an example for me which teaches manhood.
Yes.
That we've been deprived of, because a large part of what we describe masculinity is not just about your testosterone displays. It's learning to control that and your discipline and delayed gratification. And the problem is, these are the things that we've lost.
Can you just say that again, please? I want to emphasize this.
Yeah.
Delayed gratification.
Delayed gratification, and also managing your emotions and discipline. These are things that are not as encouraged in our community as they used to be. That it's like, you're an older, you know, as I say, it's an African turn of phrase now. It's like, don't die of a Nash. Yeah, but that's the thing where it's like, your sexual proclivity should not be driving you to take a man's life.
Yeah.
To go and sit in the jail and be around a man the rest of your life over, like, it's
and then talk about it like 10 years into your jail sentence, saying, yo, man, don't do this, I did that, rare, because but then the space ain't there for man to learn. Yeah, I'm showing you. So I get, it's important, bro. And this is how you got these red pill people, online people who are basically like what's his name, Pied Piper, bro, and just leading our children away with the promises of like sex and easy women, and leading us away with like material wealth, and not teaching them about the financial literacy and the responsibility that comes with that. These are the tenets, these things that you're talking about, the delayed gratification, the discipline, the being able to control the testosterone hormone when you're just feeling enraged and whatnot. And these are the things that you get from elder men, like the teachings and whatnot. Yeah. These are the things that qualify you to lead a family.
It's it, and a sense of responsibility. And I think a lot of time when we question what makes you a man, for me, and after a lot of soul searching and an ongoing journey, because it is dynamic. You don't just reach being a certain level of a man and you're done. But it is about accountability and responsibility for your own personhood. Like, you have to understand, as a man, if I say I'm a man, I do certain things, I have consequences for my actions that I have to understand.